I'm starting off this video at what I was hoping would be the Tri-State Rock, where New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania meet. And this is the mighty Delaware River. And I'm underneath Route 84, and here's a boundary marker for New York and New Jersey. But I don't see any mention of Pennsylvania, but there was a sign off the road to this cemetery, this historic cemetery over here, very pretty, and it said to the Tri-State Rock. But I wanted to start that video off here, and I'm going to go up the Delaware from Port Jervis, which I've filmed before in an earlier video, actually a couple of videos, and I want to see what the other towns are like north of Port Jervis, and let's see how far we get. But if you're into infrastructure, this is an unusual vantage point to be, as Route 84 goes over the Delaware River right here. By the way, when you're driving through this cemetery, it's not hard to find headstones with the last name Quick. There are a lot of people of the Quick clan that are from this area around Port Jervis. And this is looking north up the Delaware River. Just stopped here in Port Jervis just to have a little picnic, a little boat launch area, and that's Matamoras, Pennsylvania across the way. So going north, it'll all be New York on one side and Pennsylvania on the other. And not far from where I just had lunch, there's a historical society here, and this is an old fort built by Martinus Decker, and it was burned by a combination of the British and the Native Americans who were fighting together against the Americans. And then they burned this house down, even though it's a stone house, and then they rebuilt it. And then it was the headquarters of John B. Jervis of Port Jervis fame in 1826 through 28. I don't know what was going on then in the way of any kind of a war. I don't think there was a war at that point, but it's where he had his headquarters. And if you're looking for this, we're at the corner of West Main Street and Old West Main Street. A lot of history here, dating back to the late 1700s. So just to show you where we are on the map of New York State, right up here in the southeastern part of the state, but it really feels like a long ways away from New York City. But this is where there was Revolutionary War action along the Delaware and along the Hudson and along the Mohawk River. This is in Port Jervis. There are some beautiful houses here in Port Jervis, and this is one of them. The highway I'm going to be driving on here. If you love to drive, this is your road. So fortunately, they have some of these turnouts that you can park at and look out over the Delaware down below. This is the area, overall area. Everything's going to turn really green real soon. All right, onwards to the north, along New York's west coast, along the Delaware. Seeing a lot of this across the river in Pennsylvania, the rocks that come right down to the river. Not too many people on this road, Route 97. This is described as a National Scenic Byway. You can see the river can get pretty shallow here with some rapids in it. So they have rafting trips that go down the river. Not right now, but during the summer. Or maybe further south, they've already started. This is late April. We're in the little town of Berryville, which is like the first town I've come across coming up the Delaware, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really an uninhabited area. Very few houses along the river. It's really kind of unspoiled. I have to read one of these historical signs. Brant's Camp, the Mohawk leader of raid on Minisink, aka Port Jervis, camped here, July 1779. Little tidbits of history. There's a ton of people walking along the road. I wonder where they're coming from or going to. They look like mostly women. It's unusual. The other thing is there's like signs you see. This is a towpath road, and you see signs for like the Delaware and Hudson Canal. And I guess we're in Sullivan County, New York. All right. I don't know what they're all doing on the road, but they're on the move. And now we're in the little conclave called Minisink. And there's a sign about Zane Grey, the author. I'd have to read up on what his relationship is to this area, but here's the Roebling Bridge. Switch cameras here because it's a little windy. See, this is shallow water right there. And Roebling, the significance of that name is it's connected with the Brooklyn Bridge, as well as a famous old bridge in Cincinnati, and I'm sure other places too. So let's go out on the bridge. Let me read this sign about Roebling's Delaware Aqueduct. I mean, this shows a picture of him with the Brooklyn Bridge. John Augustus Roebling, 1806 to 1869. He actually died in an accident related to that bridge before it was complete, and his wife took over and his son and finished it in the 1880s. So this bridge was designed for the Delaware and Hudson Canal, and here's, you see the canal coming in across here, and it actually brought the canal across the river, and they used it to transport coal back in the day from Pennsylvania to markets in New York. All right, let's walk across it. So this is managed by the National Park Service. So that puts it in rarefied company with our national parks. It looks like a little gatekeeper's house, or collect the tolls to use the canal. Lots to see and read about here. So this sign shows where we are on the map, and that the canal came all the way down and zigzagged and everything, and went across the Delaware River and then up north up to Kingston, where it then connected with the Hudson. So kind of a circuitous route, but in this area there are a lot of mountains, so it'd be kind of tough to cut through that. A 108-mile long canal with 108 locks. That's a lot of locks. Just a little one-lane bridge. I think it goes in both directions, but somehow you have to, I don't know how it's regulated, unless it's just by line of sight. Well, this allows us to go over the Delaware. Beautiful. You never know whether you're going to have a history lesson while you're driving just to check out the scenery. So he designed 4 bridges like this, and I think this is the only one left. But you can see how they sort of preserved the walls of the canal. It was vertical. This road is where the bottom of the water was for the flatboats. Well, I can't get enough of this scenery, so I'm just filming it as I walk across. See how much the water rises and falls here, like that log is up on the pier, which is made out of wood. So the river was higher at one point. All right, another sign to read. So this sign is just basically saying that where you see like little rapids there, that is the remnants of a dam that was built to raise the level of the river so that you could float logs and also boats down the river. See, here we are, and then Slackwater Dam is just upstream. A lot of engineering back in the day. This house, by the way, I do not see it over there. It's too bad that that's no longer existent. All right, let me just walk into Pennsylvania and then turn around and come back, and we'll continue. So this sign features a picture from 1910, and basically what it's explaining is that these wooden jut-outs from the piers of the bridge are meant to break up ice, which at least back in the day they said could get as thick as 6 feet thick. I wonder if that's still true anymore, because if things are warmer and we haven't had the super cold winters like they had back in the 1800s. Anyway, they rebuilt this wooden walkway, which was the tow path, and they rebuilt those wooden icebreakers, they call them, that go in front of the piers. There's some deer just munching on some grass over here. Beautiful little historic church up the hill. Let me put the telephoto on that. Let's zero in on this. Can't tell from here whether it's still a functioning thing, but beautiful nonetheless. So just watching the car action, it is a line of sight thing. You come to the end and you look to see if there's somebody at the other end, or if a car is coming your way, and then you yield. I guess it works. And you have public restrooms here on the Pennsylvania side. And there's also a railroad on this side of the river. I was looking for one on the New York side. Did not see one. Maybe it's further inland. Well, I haven't seen any trains go by, but this track looks like it's in really good shape. So maybe they still haul coal, maybe, from this area. I don't really see any sign of an old train station, unless maybe this used to be one. A couple of older buildings here. It's the post office of Lackawaxen, Pennsylvania. So that's where Zane Grey lived, in Lackawaxen. I'll just walk down by this inn here. So this rustic looking place, nice looking place, called the Inn at Lackawaxen. You know, for this being out here in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of a busy little place. Traffic coming and going. This no trespassing sign seems to indicate that this is the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railway. But I don't see any sign of a train station. I feel like it's going back into the country down there. By the way, it was the railroads that put the canals out of business. One technology taking over the other. By the way, I was curious as to why some of the public buildings have their flags at half staff. It's because of the recent passing of Pope Francis. You don't see that too often. Flags half staff for a religious leader. I just wanted to take this picture of the National Park Service sign for where we are. Beautiful house here right by the aqueduct. Wonder if it's a private home. If so, they get a lot of activity going right by their front door. And they do have bike racks here. I wouldn't normally point that out, but you do see signs for watch for bicyclists on Route 97 on the New York side. And if you're a bicyclist, this would be like the ultimate challenge. It's really up and down road, and cars are going pretty high speed. But you could have the luxury of being able to stop and read every historic sign along the road, of which there are many. And I'm going to read another one here. Yeah, this sign is basically commenting on that it's unusual to see a boat crossing a river perpendicular to the river, above the river. But that's what this did in order to shorten the way to get to their final destination. And they were describing this as a suspension bridge. I didn't know what they meant because you don't see any cables. But back in the day, this was the cable down at this level. So it was a suspension bridge. fascinating. I was just doing some background reading on my phone to tie up a loose end here. Zane Grey, he was from out west and he wrote novels about the West, but he came here and lived here for 13 years in Lackawaxen in the early 1900s, and he was one of his most productive periods of writing. So it's a pretty area, but it's kind of funny that he'd be all the way east here and be writing about the western US. And they have a museum which is made out of part of his former home. I don't know if the other part is still standing or how that all works. All right, we're gonna walk back to the New York side. This just shows you we were here, and the canal boats, they came down the canal, or the Lackawaxen, no, they came down the canal parallel to the Lackawaxen River and then went across the Delaware River and then down parallel to the Delaware. They had it all figured out back then. And here's the old railroad. I might go over here and just to see if I can find a old train station. I think this is, well, I'll definitely find out what little hamlet this is. The wind is kicking up, but hopefully you can sort of hear the rapids. It's high overcast today and there's rain predicted for the weekend. Today's a Friday. And I see somebody's out there on the river. By the way, I didn't see any signs saying you couldn't if you wanted to, but there's little narrow sidewalks. You could walk along the road on the viaduct for a totally immersive experience, but you would be missing all this scenery. Just drive across the bridge waiting for these people to cross first. Speed limit 15 miles an hour. What it's like driving across an aqueduct to a towpath. It's my seatbelt light going off for my passenger seat. I'll have to sort that out over here. And a final piece of information. This canal was in operation for 50 years, from 1848 to 1898. And you can also take a half-mile walk along the river on the old towpath that was used alongside the river before the aqueduct was built for 20 years. And I picked up a brochure. So an interesting thing like this is really fun to pursue, but it definitely puts a dent in the timing of the day. So I'll have to come back to this area at a future date and see more along the Delaware River in upstate New York. Thanks for watching.